Hello everyone, Nathaniel Gavronsky here, and it's October 26th. And on this day in history, Wednesday, October 26th, 1881, at 3 o'clock p.m. In Tombstone, Arizona, took place the most famous gunfight in all the Old West. This was a gunfight between the law, the marshal's office, which was Virgil, Morgan, and Wyatt Earp, all of which grew up mostly in the state of Iowa. Morgan was actually born in Iowa, and Doc Holliday, a dentist from Atlanta, Georgia, that had become friends with Wyatt a few years prior to this, had all met and become part of the law in Tombstone, Arizona. They were going to enforce an ordinance about not carrying your sidearm in town against a gang of quote-unquote cowboys, which was Billy and Ike Clanton, Billy Claiborne, Tom and Frank McLaury. Now these guys were the cowboys. It was a gang that was actually stealing cattle and trying to move them down to the Mexican border and selling them down there. It was serious business, and these were capital crimes that they were committing as far as the murders and the theft of livestock. So the Earps, which were the sworn-in law, had to go enforce this ordinance. So about 3 o'clock p.m., they walked down the street of Tombstone, and this is called the Battle and the Gunfight of OK Corral, but it actually happened a few doors down, about 6 doors down actually, in an empty lot next to a photography studio at the back end of the corral. However, that doesn't sound quite as nice, so the gunfight, the OK Corral. A lot of people didn't even really know this thing took place until the early 20th century. Wyatt Earp would actually die in 1929, and just before his death, a lot of his stories were being told in books and the beginnings of movies. He was actually working in Hollywood as an advisor to the Old West, and this is when a lot of those movies were being produced, and so that's when the story of this all really became, public knowledge. Now the situation is this: you had the Earps and Doc Holliday and Fort, and he had against 5 of the cowboys. Now Ike actually was unarmed, and in the middle of this whole thing runs over to Wyatt and grabs him and says, "Hey, I'm not armed, and Wyatt famously says, "Either fight or get out of here," and they push Ike to the side. Now it is historically recalled that Doc Holliday was the first one to cock his weapon and possibly the first one to shoot, but we're not entirely for sure. We do know that this gunfight lasted all of 30 seconds, and in that 30 seconds, 30 shots were fired, leaving 3 dead. Both Tom and Frank McLaury and Ike Clanton were killed. Billy Clanton were killed. Ike survived because he wasn't armed and ran inside of the photography studio, and Billy Claiborne also survived. Out of the Earp clan, Virgil, Morgan, and Doc were all injured. The only one left standing without a scratch on him was Wyatt Earp. Now, this would actually go to trial. The Earps were arrested, you just killed 3 people in town. However, because of their legal status as lawmen trying to enforce a city ordinance, they were acquitted all charges. However, street justice was not over with the whole situation. On December 28th, Virgil was actually ambushed on the streets, and don't forget, he was the actual head cop in town. He was maimed and lost an arm, and a month after that, Morgan and Wyatt were ambushed in a pool hall through a window, and Morgan actually was shot in the back and died in the pool hall. Now Morgan is the one actually born in the state of Iowa. Wyatt and Virgil were born just on the Illinois side of the border, but mostly grew up here in the state of Iowa. Doc was born down by Atlanta and was a dentist in Atlanta, and after being diagnosed with consumption, which was tuberculosis, he actually moved to Dallas and then further out west and up and down from Deadwood area all the way down to Tombstone and back to Colorado. But this was the culmination of the bad guys and good guys, and as far as the Old West was concerned. The Earps would become famous for lawmen, even though in reality they were just kind of side hustlers. Law was their way of making money. They were silver speculators. They were owners of brothels and hotels. And the same thing with the Clantons and the McLaurys. They just one side had badges, one side didn't. I'm more partial to the Earp side. However, in this area, it also comes down to a grouping of one county being more Republican and one county being more Democrat. Now, this was Arizona. Arizona actually was going to side with the Confederacy during the Civil War, and you had a lot of veterans from both sides that were, settling these areas, and the law kind of culminated with who was settling the area. So this was a very, very gray area as far as who was right and wrong. But as far as the U.S. government was concerned, the Earps were the marshals. As far as the courts were concerned, the Earps acted within the legal rights of, officiating their office as marshals and enforcing a city ordinance, which again allowed the Earps to walk free along with Doc Holliday. This story has been retold hundreds of times in books and stories and movies. I first learned about it when I watched the movie Tombstone and the movie White Earp. I've actually been to Tombstone. I've actually walked the grounds and everything. It's a very nice little, statues that are kind of like where these people were standing. The very cool thing in history to learn about is that a lot of these old West stories actually have a grain of truth in them. I've traveled quite a few some of these old towns that stand and be where some of these guys are, from Kit Carson to John Fremont to Wild Bill. I've tried to kind of follow where a lot of these guys have gone and places they've been and visited their graves. It's a really cool time in history, in American history. It's kind of where we develop kind of our hearty sense of individuality and our sense of trying to dominate the land, and how we actually kind of developed as a nation, especially through the Wild West and Manifest Destiny. So I would encourage you to look more into the Old West, into the settlement of Tombstone, the old silver mines, and how people in Iowa actually had a huge impact on the formation of these places. Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois, it seems to be a lot of people from those three states that end up having a huge impact in all these little boom towns for silver, gold. So check them out. Look up more if you are more curious about the city of Tombstone. Wyatt Earp, Virgil Earp, Morgan Earp, Doc Holliday, Frank and Tom McLaury, Ike and Billy Clanton, and Billy Claiborne. These are some major historical figures that actually shaped a lot of the West and a lot of our culture as America. So this is Nathaniel Gavronski. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, and share. As always, stay healthy, stay wealthy, stay wise, and as always, stay classy, Iowa.